Our case before us this morning is Baltimore Homa Community, case number 6315. Mr. Allman, would you go ahead and introduce the file for us, please? And by the way, Mr. Allman is sitting in for Mr. Dixon this morning, for those of you that are wondering.
Okay, case 6315, a request for a conditional use for a retreat conference center. The site is located at 1020 Pool Road, Westminster, Maryland, on property zone C, Conservation District in Election District 7. The applicant is the Baltimore Homa Community. Code of Public Ordinances, section 158.071D8. A site plan visit was tentatively scheduled for Wednesday, April 21st at 9:15 a.m. In the file, we have a memo from planning, the Department of Planning, and a letter from Linda Eisenberg, having reviewed the information contained, the relevant portions of the plan, and in accordance with the provisions set forth in the Land Use Article of Maryland. This conditional use request is consistent with the policies, implementation, timing of development, timing of rezoning, development patterns, land uses, and densities or intensities with the Carroll County Master Plan. Further Planning Department comments, the subject property has a land use designation of conservation in the 2009 Westminster Comprehensive Plan. This request is consistent with future land use designation for agriculture. The surrounding area is comprised primarily of agricultural and medium density residential. The subject property is located outside the Westminster Priority Funding Area. The request is compatible with the vision and goals for the area as expressed in Chapter 10, Tourism and Culture of the 2009 City of Westminster Comprehensive Plan. There are no historic properties on or around the site. The request would be affected by a planned major street. The property located along Pool Run runs into Chandler Drive, which is a planned road extension in the 2014 Carroll County Master Plan as amended in 2019. A 2012 traffic report found that along Pool Road east of New Washington Road, there is an ADT of 1543, and the requested conditional use could possibly increase vehicular traffic, specifically at the time of large events. Therefore, impact on the surrounding community should be considered. The property is located in the no planned water service area and no planned sewer service area. The requested conditional use is consistent with the zoning classification under 158.7D1 or D8. Then we have a memo from the Carroll County Health Department that the proposed use may not be acceptable unless it is demonstrated that there is adequate water supply and an adequate area for installation of initial and two replacement septic systems for the proposed use and any existing uses of this property. We then have a memo from Thomas Harris from the Bureau of Permits and Inspections. A building permit is required for the renovations of the existing pole building. Accessibility will be addressed during the site plan and building permit process. We have a notice of a public hearing for this hearing that was on Monday, April 5th, 2021. There is a memo from the Bureau of Resource Management with the following comments. If a site plan is required, the variable width stream buffer must be shown, and it should be noted that the site is within an aquifer and surface water protection area. Then we have the site plan. We have no comments from the Ag Land Preservation Program. Comments from Jay Boyd, the zoning administrator. The applicant is proposing a retreat center operated by the Baltimore Homa community. A site plan approval by the county's Planning and Zoning Commission will be required. A notice of public hearing to the adjoining property owners and interested parties. Then we have the initial comment form from Jay Boyd. The application appears sufficient. Now we have the application for a hearing from the Baltimore Homa and a Geta Sharma. The request is for a conditional use for a retreat center, inside renovation of existing pole barn, adding insulation, heat, AC, and flooring. The length of renovation inside structure of police barn. They expect that to be 3 months. We have some pictures of the property and improvements upon the property, drawings and site plans of the property. Images, a bird's eye view of the property and the parcel. And that is it, Mr. Chairman. I ask that the file be entered into evidence.
Do I have a motion to enter the file into evidence?
So moved.
Okay, do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, we have a motion to enter the file into evidence. All those in favor, say aye and raise your right hand. Very good. Thank you. With that, before we get started, this is for everyone that's on the call that's not a board member. The procedures that we use for the Board of Zoning Appeals is the applicant has the opportunity to present their case for their request. That would be you, Mrs. Broom. And after you make your presentation, then members of the community can ask you questions of your testimony, and then the board members will get an opportunity to ask questions of your testimony. At that point in the process, then any interested parties, surrounding neighbors or whoever might be in on the call, will have the opportunity to provide testimony of their own, and then they will be subject to questioning by Ms. Broom and also then by the Board of Zoning Appeals members. So there'll be summation comments, and then the board will go ahead and render a decision. So with that, Mrs. Broom, would you go ahead and present your case for your application?
Mr. Chair, don't forget to swear everyone in.
Thank you, Ms. Vance. What would we do without you? Or what would I do without you? So before we begin, if anyone has any intention of testifying here today, could you please raise your right hand and take the oath? Do you swear or affirm under the penalties of perjury that the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
I do. I do.
Okay. Very good. Ms. Broom?
I don't think I'm the one to make a testimony.
Oh, yeah, yes, you are. If you're presenting the case, that will be your testimony.
I believe someone else needs to make the testimony in my place.
And who would that be?
Patricia Norton.
Is she on the call, or is she going to be on the call shortly?
See, I'm on the phone, so I can't see who's there.
She's not there. She's not showing up on my screen.
Okay, then Thomas Couto,
No, ma'am.
Henry Gregory.
No, ma'am.
They're there. He's the one that called me to make sure I'm here.
Yeah, they are not on the call, Mrs. Broom. I hate to tell you that. I'm looking at 17 callers on the line, and none of those names have come up. And anyone that's on the call has an actual name below it, so they're not there.
Ms. Broom, Mr. Gregory could not attend this, and he could not get a hold of Miss Norton. So he was asking you to represent Baltimore Homa, which means you would have to testify as to what it is you guys are asking for.
Okay, I believe Tom Couto is online. I thought I heard his voice when we did the eyes.
No, that was Mr. Lemmerman, that who is an interested party that.
Oh, I see.
Ms. Broom, I don't want to give you counsel. That's not my job, but it appears that you're not prepared to go forward with the case, and it would be my recommendation that on behalf of your organization, you would go ahead and request a postponement till next month.
I don't think we want to do that. Explain to me what the testimony it is that you want from me. What, in other words, what we're requesting?
Yes, we need you to present your case as to why what your request is. It's a conditional use. It's a request for conditional use for a retreat or conference center. So we need someone to testify as to what
it is we want to do. Yes. All right. We have the Baltimore Homa community owns Ancient Oaks Homa Farm in Westminster, Maryland, 28 acres, and we have a beautiful. We call it a community center, or it's a large studio. We have lots of space for hiking. We have a stream. We have an area where we have drumming, and we put hay bales out there. We've held staff retreats. We've held camps, summer camps for children from the inner city, and people want to come out and actually use the place for their own retreats and their own purposes. So we would like permission to actually designate our farm as a designation place, as a retreat center where people can actually pay to come and set up their own events at our farm.
Okay. Could you describe? Will there be any new buildings built on the property?
My understanding is that the building that we have now, which is a sort of a huge closed-in space, we would like to enhance it but not build a new building. We want to enhance it. There's a deck that we want to add on to it. There's glass doors we want to add to it. We want to make it a little bit more accessible from the driveway. We want to be able to have people to be able to park easily as opposed to just parking on the grass all the time. So instead of building a new building, we want to enhance. We want to enhance the building that is already there.
Okay. My question to you, could you explain a little bit about what the Baltimore Homa community actually is and what your outreach is and kind of what your purpose is for the board and for the callers that are listening?
We are a 501c3 educational agricultural organization. We are a collective of professionals, teachers, therapists, performers, actors, and our main purpose is to be able to introduce techniques and tools for sustainable living. We have a huge gardening or farming space out there where we grow vegetables and produce totally organic, and we are using principles based on the science of the Vedic science of homotherapy. We literally invite people to come so that they can learn about homotherapy and they can actually experience being out in nature in a calm, peaceful atmosphere, especially children from the inner city. For 3 to 4 summers in a row, we just brought busloads of children out there so that they could actually play, run around, hike, and participate in activities like drumming, like dancing, like crafts, arts and crafts. For adults, we've given school staff retreats for people who want to just come and experience being in this peaceful, calming atmosphere, learn about homotherapy, this Vedic science of healing or nourishing the atmosphere. We have been in existence, I don't know, it's so long now. The group itself has been in existence for 20 to 30 years. The actual 501c3 is probably like 7 to 9 years old. That's sort of in a nutshell.
Okay, and so how long has your organization owned this property?
It's either 6 or 7 years now. I'm not really sure.
I think it's
Okay.
6 years. This is Adam.
Okay. Adam, are you a neighbor?
No, I'm a member of the community.
Oh, you're a member of the Baltimore Homa community. Okay. You'll have an opportunity to actually give your testimony, but I'm glad you clarified that. So we absolutely do want to hear from you a little later. Ms. Green, when you have activities there, what is the scope and scale of your activities? In other words, the frequency and the number of people that would be there at any given time.
Was that to me or was that to Adam?
No, that was to you, Ms. Broom.
Oh, I'm sorry. You said how many people are there at the farm at a given time?
Yes, and at what frequency? And is it a lot more frequent in the summer or the fall, winter, spring?
I see. Right.
Weekends? Is it 7 days a week?
2 people live there. 2 people actually live at the farm. Now, as far as activities in the warmer weather, there's like spring and summer, there's, any event could be from 15 to 90 people. More averaging closer to like 30 people, something like that. In the colder weather, not so much, because the space itself is not fully insulated with heat yet, so we can't have, lots of indoor stuff there. So in the fall and the winter, it's smaller numbers, small retreats, small workshops. But in the summer and in the spring, I think one of our events, we had a farewell ceremony to one of our members who passed away, and I think close to like 90 people came. We've had huge dinners out there, outdoors, and anywhere from 25 to 30 people came. When we do the summer camps, the summer programs for the children, across the whole summer, we've had a total of like 300 children there, maybe about 50 to 70 at a time. We have, what's his name? Gabriel Pickus does children's retreats, and they're anywhere between 10 to 12 children at a time. And all of it is mainly warmer weather, summer weather, early fall. Winter, not so much.
And these events that you have, when the people show up, what is the duration of their stay? Is it for a weekend? Is it for a week? Or is it just a day type activity?
Right. The children's programs are always a day activity. Most of the events are day activities. Every now and then, I think Gabe Pickus, his retreat with the children could be like a weekend. So they have a weekend overnighter when they bring tents, etc., and stay there.
Okay, I think that kind of covers the scope of your intentions there. Does anyone from the public have any questions of Ms. Broom's testimony? So anyone from the community have any questions?
I'm wondering, this is Mary Jo Holochek, and I'm wondering about parking and the traffic coming into the area. Pool Road is a fairly small road. It has significant twists and turns in either direction that you come. There's at least 3 signed dangerous curves. And if you come from 97, anybody that lives in Westminster knows that intersection of Pool, Mary, and 97 is dangerous. So I'm curious about how much traffic is expected to come in. Will people be coming in individually or in buses, and where they'll park, and whether that the bridge that goes onto the property is safe enough to support additional traffic?
Our driveway up to, hello?
I'm sorry, Ms. Broom. I just wanted to say, can you go ahead and respond to Ms. Holchek?
Right. The driveway up to the actual central area is very, very long. So everybody parks along that driveway on either side of the little road, across the little bridge, and then all the way up the road. They have plenty of space to park along that road on either side. When we have events, especially if it's children, it's just usually buses. It's either one bus, or if it's a lot of children, it might be 2 buses. If there have been events where people come 2 or 3 in a car, 1 in a car, we've usually never had events where the cars have been parked all the way down the driveway. I think that would have to be an event that would be like huge, 100 or some people, but, we've never had events that large. And, I'm aware of how curvy Pool Road is, but we've never had any kind of incidents where there's been any kind of problem or an overload of traffic or anything like that, and nobody has ever had to park any place other than on our driveway.
Another question I have is whether you would rent your facility to folks other than those in your HOMA community. In other words, is this perhaps a means of revenue generation for you that other people that perhaps aren't as well controlled by your group might be renting?
Oh yeah, most of our, except for the events that we give or host ourselves, most of the events are hosted by people who like us or appreciate what we do, but they're not necessarily connected with us. So we rent out to people who want this peaceful, calming farm atmosphere where they can hike and look at the cows. We have 3 beautiful long-haired Highlander cows. So yeah, most of the people that do come and rent are not a part of our community at all, but they do like us or know of us, and they like the atmosphere that we've created out there.
Right. And I guess, and my concern is just as, even though they might be like-minded, as we get farther and farther from the original people that own the property or live in this area, I have concerns about changing this very beautiful place that we live and the traffic on the road and things like that.
I can understand exactly what you mean. For some reason, I don't foresee that. I don't see us renting out or having events to a great number of people who are not about holistic, sustainable living, who are not appreciative of the area, our farm, and our mission. I don't foresee that at all.
Is there any kind of cap on the number of people that you allow per event so that you can accommodate them, whether it's parking facilities or bathroom facilities or whatever it might be?
I'm not sure if we have set an exact cap, but I do know the largest event that we've had was, like I said, it was a commemoration or funeral service for one of our members who passed away, and it was 90 people, and then most of them were like families. So, and they were of us. So they were, they carpooled, they were all together. As far as like a public event, probably the largest is in the summer when we bring the children out, and there would be a school bus that might be 50, 60 people total, including 40-some children and then 20-some adults or something like that, or teenagers, counselors and stuff like that.
Got it.
Okay. Anyone else have questions of Ms. Broom's testimony? Thank you, Ms. Holochek.
I do. My name is Kim, and we back up to your property.
Wait a minute. Let me interrupt you. Let me. Ms. Bittner, could you please state for the record name, address, and occupation, and spell for the record your last name? Thank you.
Sure. It's Kim Bittner, Bittner, and I live at 1219 Chandler Drive, which backs up to the property of the Baltimore HOMA community.
Melvin, you're muted.
Ms. Bittner, and again, questions of Ms. Broom's testimony, you'll have the opportunity to provide your own testimony later in the proceedings.
I have a question for her.
Go ahead.
Am I not supposed to ask now? I can wait.
No, Ms. Bittner, you can. In previous hearings, we have problems with people not asking questions but providing testimony. So that's why I was just making it extra clear that it'd be a question of her testimony.
Yes. Okay. Ms. Broom, you talked about enlarging or enhancing the parking. What exactly do you mean by that? when you talked
I
about
don't-
the building?
Where they park now is on either side of the driveway that comes up. That I think they may, I'm not sure, they may want to just put gravel on either side of that long driveway, just so that people can park more easily and not just roll up on the grass. That might not be a definite thing, but I think that might have been a consideration.
Okay.
Right
Okay.
now, when people park, they just park on either side of the driveway, which is on the grass.
Okay. Any other questions, Ms. Bittner?
Yes, I have a question. I have a comment.
Okay, I was just asking Ms. Bittner if she had any more questions. Ms. Bittner, any more questions while we've got you?
No, sir. Thank you.
Okay. Okay, now, yes, ma'am. And remember, state your name, address, and occupation, and spell for the record your last name.
Hi, everybody. Good morning. My name is Patricia Norton, Norton, and I live at 1020 Pool Road at Ancient Oaks Farm. And I'm a member of Baltimore Homa Community, and so is Geeta Sharma sitting next to me. So I reside at the farm, and I'm one of the main caretakers of the farm. So I'd be happy to answer any questions anyone has. But one thing I would like to clarify is that the bulk of the guests that come to the farm actually park at the very top of the hill, which is a very, very large parking area. So parking is never an issue. And I've actually have never ever known any issue with there being any kind of traffic problem or any kind of fender benders or any kind of traffic issues on Pool Road. So and that bridge on the entry to Pool Farm is extremely adequate to support any traffic that comes up Pool Road. So if there's any questions, I'm really happy to answer any questions from anybody about any concerns that you might have.
Okay, so thank you, Ms. Norton. Does anyone else from the community have any questions of either Ms. Norton or Ms. Broom's testimony at this point? Okay. Seeing none, board members, questions of either Ms. Broom's testimony or Ms. Norton's testimony?
No questions from me.
Thank you, Mr. Simmons. Lisa?
I have a couple of questions. So effectively,
Okay.
you were already operating this as a retreat like you're requesting permission for or a conditional use for. Is that what I'm understanding?
There are occasional events that we have, just being gatherings of people, correct?
And one of the comments from the planning technician was a concern about traffic. And I recognize and I understand that you, have indicated that that's not an issue at this location. But if you were intending to have more events, has there been any kind of traffic study done by a traffic engineer?
I believe that the scope of the gatherings that we have, I don't know that that's necessary, but perhaps that's not for me to decide. But it doesn't seem that that's necessary to me, but I'm not the expert.
Thank you.
Mr. Work, any questions?
I don't have any questions.
Dr. Dunkelberger? Any questions at this point? Okay. Is there any any other testimony from the applicant, in addition to Ms. Broom or Ms. Norton?
Any more questions?
I don't have any. Patricia, you have any? Adam, you're there. Did you want to say anything?
Yeah, I'm sorry, Adam is not on our call at this point, Ms. Broom.
Okay, he left. Okay.
Dropped off.
Okay.
Okay.
So
I don't think so.
Okay, very good. So at this point, does anyone from the community have any testimony that they would want to offer? Start with you, Ms. Bittner. Do you have any testimony that you would like to offer? Okay, don't hear anything out of Ms. Bittner. Ms. Holchek, do you have any? Oh, Mr. Zimmerman, here one. Do you have any testimony to offer?
The only testimony that I would have to offer is that obviously all of us here that are in our community appreciate what the HOMA community is doing there, but we don't want to change our community in terms of traffic, safety, things like that. I appreciate that some of these events are low volume, but I also appreciate, I think it was one of the board members that asked about a traffic study. I think, excuse me, anecdotal information about traffic is just that. It's just one person's perception or what they've heard from maybe one or two people. I think if we're really going to look at this and be cautious about it, we should do a traffic study. Guardrails were put up on this road about 5 or 6 years ago because it is a dangerous road with the turns and people run off the road. And although the speed limit is 30, it's very rare I see anybody doing 30. This is a road that is trafficked by the local neighbors, both from my community, which is Pool Meadows, and now Stonegate, and then Windermere Farms. Numerous people walk just to walk. They walk their pets. I run on that road. And so there is fairly heavy pedestrian traffic that's put at risk when the traffic volume goes up, particularly if people aren't adhering to the speed limit, which is an unfortunate problem regardless of the HOMA farm, but it gets worse if there's more traffic coming in. So I personally would like to see more studies looking at the traffic and figuring out, can the road handle this? And particularly, I have concerns if this is going to expand to people other than the HOMA community renting the facility, because you might have some internal control over people that belong to your own organization, but you don't always have as much control as you'd like over people that are coming in and just renting the facility. And many of us live here in Carroll County because it's a beautiful, quiet place, and that's what Pool Road is. And I would just like a better study to make sure that it stays that way, and something that's based on actual information rather than just anecdotal stuff, whether it's anecdotal from me or anecdotal from folks that are trying to do the good work at the HOMA farm.
Okay, Ms. Norton, do you have any questions of her testimony? You're muted. Ms. Norton, you're muted.
I don't.
You're good now.
Say again?
We have hardly any programs for youth that they're concerned about.
I don't have any questions. I just have a comment in that I find that the traffic on Pool Road is incredibly low volume. In my estimation, I've been there for 7 years. I don't see a dire need to have any kind of study with such low traffic. And I mean, we haven't had an event there in, 7 months, something like that, or 8 months, something like that. And very few, I mean, maybe a couple in 2020. So I just don't know that that is a concern right now, but That's just my thoughts right now. I mean, our events are so few and far between right now because we're just getting started with doing this, that I don't know that that would be an urgent concern. So just a comment.
Right. And I appreciate that comment. I realize in COVID times, it's very difficult to measure just about anything, but that makes the very good point that I am concerned about as well. And that is, right now, everything is much lower volume because we're just easing out of COVID times. I do have concerns where we'll be when traffic in the entire world is more back to normal, whatever that will turn out to be. And then you all might start doing more events and more people might be coming. And I don't know what it'll be. Like you say, it's hard to know. I would just like to have some better idea of it, because once we, the zoning board agrees to this, it's done. There's no going back. And that's my concern, is trying to make a decision in a time when we don't know exactly what's going on, and how can we get a metric, some way to measure it or know, so we know where we are now, we know where we might be in 6 months when things are more normal. I don't want to get farther down the road and be sorry we didn't check, we didn't do anything, because then volumes are back to normal and we'll have far more traffic than we want. And I'm out on this road every day. I run from Pool Meadows down to the end of the road every day. So I see a lot of the traffic. I see a lot of the near misses. I see all the places people have run off the road and it hasn't probably been reported. Again, that's my information's anecdotal, so I have no way to measure it, but I guess I would just like some way to get a better handle on it and not change this permanently for the worse without real data.
Okay. I'm going to interject myself here just based on what I've heard. Ms. Norton and Ms. Broom, would it be the Board of Zoning Appeals has the ability to put conditions on an approval, and I'm just throwing this out there. Would you be amicable to a condition that this property only be used for your own activities and not rented out to a third party?
I think that every event that we have ever had there has always been either stimulated by or brought together from someone in the community, or someone who we are very close to who wants to have an event there, someone we know, someone we trust, and they know that they'll love the farm and take care of the farm as much as we do. So I don't foresee any kind of problem in the future. We're not going to just rent out to somebody that there's no connection, right? And they have to adhere to all the different parameters guidelines that we have set forth. So there's never been a problem at any event that we've had, and I don't foresee any in the future, because we only rent to people that we know that we trust, and that there's some kind of a personal connection to.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Lemmerman, do you have testimony?
I do. Hi, Patricia.
Hi there.
Just before I get too into it, I just had to make a statement on the record, for the record, I guess. In the report at the beginning of the presentation, I believe I heard in the county staff report that there was no historical properties on or near the property, and I don't think that's correct. In the Maryland Historic Registry, I mean, is our property, which is immediately adjacent to the site here. There's two directly identified across the streets that are historical houses. And then there's two properties away to the south, and two properties away to the west, and two properties away to the northwest. So I just wanted to make that on the record. but it's really not relevant to the application to a degree. So anyway, with that being said, I just wanted to say that, you know, Patricia's been a great neighbor. I don't have any issues with her. We've had a couple issues where people are standing in the woods directly behind our house, kind of hanging out, making my kids and wife a little nervous. But other than that, we haven't had any issues. But with the proposal on the table here, I would like to, I think it's appropriate to restrict the capacity due to COVID right now, things are a little tamer, and it would help rein in and I think make the community a little more comfortable as far as future expansions. So I think it will be appropriate for the board to place some kind of a capacity limit on events. It is a rural road, and like they said. Other than that, also I do, with that in mind, I do think it will be appropriate to maybe adhere or put some restrictions on some setbacks for anything that's related to the proposed use to residential uses that are adjacent. The back of the property is lined with residence, which you guys can probably see, and then ours also. I think it would just be appropriate to have some kind of standard setback, like the standard setback that's in the zoning code of 200 feet from residential uses for most conditional uses. So I think that will be appropriate from to place a restriction on this, just to protect the neighborhood. And other than that, considering the proposed use, I think it will be also appropriate to have it where it's non-transferable. The board has done that many times where, we trust Patricia as a neighbor, but if they ever sell, we don't want the conference or whatever that the board may approve be transferable to just anyone else, because that could get out of hand quickly. So that's all I have. Thank you.
Does anyone have any questions of Mr. Lemmerman's testimony? Ms. Norris? Board members, any questions of Mr. Lemmerman's testimony? Okay, seeing none. Go ahead, Ms. Norris. Unmute yourself.
I would just like to ask John about the people that made him uncomfortable, if what that situation looked like and what can be done about that. This is the first time I've heard of it, so I apologize for that happening, and I just wanted to know a little bit more about that.
Oh, he's
Everybody keeps forgetting. It was just a couple instances, but one in particular I think that made my kids and wife the most nervous was there was a group of teenagers that they didn't know whether who it was. They were right there at the at the edge of our rear yard, which is the edge of your woods basically, and it's eye level with my kids' bedrooms. So they hung out for quite a good probably an hour at that same location, and they weren't sure if they were being spied on or what was going on or who they were. So that was their concern, and that was really what's driven my my neighborly request to just have some kind of setback off the property lines for any related uses that you have.
Okay.
Ask him to notify.
Can you like, I think that you have my phone number. Whenever something like that happens, can you let me know?
Sure.
Right away. That would be really great. Thank you.
Yes. No problem.
Okay, Mr. Wirtz, I think you had a question of Mr. Lemmerman's testimony.
Mr. Lemmerman, you suggested a capacity limit. I missed it? Did you suggest a certain limit?
I did not suggest a limit. I believe Ms. Broom had testified the largest event has been 90 people. I don't really have, I think the board is probably more appropriate to decide what's appropriate for that site and use. However, whatever the restriction is, I guess they'll have to address that at a site plan stage. also. So no, I don't want to really dictate the, the capacity, but I do believe that it should be thought, considered by the board.
Okay. Other board members have any questions of Mr. Limmerman's testimony? Okay, seeing none. Does anyone else have any testimony that they want to provide? Okay. Let me ask you a quick question, Ms. Norris. You said that for a memorial service for one of your members, I guess Ms. Broom said this, there were about 90 people there. Normally, what's the size and scope of your? I understand that was a extenuating circumstances, but if there was a limit of 100 people put on events there, any one given event, would that fit into your vision of what you want to use the property for?
Yes, absolutely. Yes. The parking lot at the top of the driveway is very spacious. We have 2 bathrooms. We have, all the conditions are set up at the 28 acres. It's a very large property. If needed be, we could have multiple events at that property at one time, but not that we're going to do that. But there's so much space at that farm that it can very easily accommodate 90 people with no problem.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Any other testimony from anyone? Last call. Okay, I see nobody's lit up. So presentation of testimony and evidence is now closed and summations are in order. Would you like to, Ms. Norris, would you like to give any summation comments?
So our community has been together for approximately 45 years, a very, very long time. And there's probably, the core of our community is probably a dozen very committed, very devoted people to want to serve the outside community, to serve the youth that are in need. And we're very passionate to really give back to our community. And we're a community that is based in the artistic arts, healing arts. We love, there's teachers and professional artists, and there's doctors, there's a lot of very passionate, earth-loving people, and who always are willing to help and to reach out to the community and hold different kinds of events there to really help the youth and anybody who's in need. And so we're very passionate to give back to the community, and that's really the main reason that we are there. So we have a lot of big dreams and a lot of visions to really help, to really want to service the community. So yeah, so we're just really looking forward to being able to do that. And so that even all of you and your families and perhaps your children, grandchildren come visit the farm one day, and just so that we can, share our services with everybody, and come together and try to stimulate peace and love and harmony and joy in our world. It's very much needed right now, so we have a lot of very beautiful, powerful, and potent programs that we offer, and we're just ready and look forward to the opportunity to be able to serve. So anything that you can do to help us, support us in that, we would really appreciate. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
have to go to Ellsberg. I should be back.
Okay.
I'll see you there.
It appears that Mr. Bale might have frozen up. I'm sure he'll be back in just a minute. Ms. Eckerd, would you like to pick up the baton?
Absolutely. Melvin, if you make your way back, I'm happy to turn it back over to you. I believe anybody else have any testimony questions? Everybody good? Okay, so in accordance with the Open Meetings Act of Maryland, the board will now consider the case. Who would like to go first? Mr. Wertz?
Well, I'd like to clarify something, and maybe Mr. Voigt, who I believe is participating, maybe could help clarify it. When I look at the agenda, it says the request is for a retreat or conference center. That implies one or the other. And that term retreat or conference center isn't listed as a use category exactly as written there. There's a use category for a conference center, and there's a use category for a retreat facility. So they're two different uses. So I don't know, Jay, is this a little confusing, or?
If you look in the ag section of the code, they're together in their conditional use listing as a retreat or conference center. To me, I think of as being almost the same. I don't, a retreat is where, a lot of times where people go to for quiet, study and other things, but conferences can be the same thing. I know in my at least in my church that I belong to, we refer to our retreats as conferences. So I think in a way they're kind of interchangeable a little bit.
So you don't have a problem with the way it's written?
No.
Your request. Okay, thank you.
Sorry, guys, I lost my connection. I'm back now. Fill me in exactly where we are in the process. Have we? I'm assuming that Ms. Norris finished her summation comments.
Yes, and Mr. Wertz wanted clarification, I guess, before he gave his opinion, or before he.
Okay. So did we? Are we now considering the case? Okay, sorry. So we do not have a motion at this point. Are we ready for a motion?
No, Mr. Wertz had just asked for clarification. So we have not done any discussion other than get the clarification from Mr. Voigt regarding retreat versus conference center. So I don't know if Mr. Wertz wants to continue.
Nah, Mr. Voigt answered my question. I don't have any other comments at this time.
Okay. Well, the hearing and record of this case is now closed. In accordance with the Open Meetings Act of Maryland, the board will now consider the case. Board members, who wants to go first?
I will.
Okay,
I don't have any issue with the existing and proposed use. I think obviously it's community service. They're doing good things. I believe that we should put some kind of restriction on the capacity, excuse me, and recognizing Mr. Lemmerman's concern as a neighbor and his experience, some kind of setback requirements appear to be appropriate as well. I also agree that this should not be transferable. If we choose to grant this conditional use, but I still have some concerns regarding the traffic because it was noted in the report by the planning technician. So I'm not 100% confident that that should not be addressed further.
okay, Mr. Wertz, you want to go next?
Yeah, I'd be in favor of a capacity restriction. And looking at the regulations, there is a section 158.071D8 that talks about retreat or conference centers. And there is a distance requirement or setback requirement. It says all buildings and housing shall be located not less than 100 feet from adjoining property. So I mean, maybe Jay needs to clarify, if we wanted a setback, is that clear enough, or should that be modified, or should that be part of the conditions, one of the conditions?
Mr. Voigt, you want to respond to that? I think we've lost Mr. Voigt. Dennis, on the site visit out there, it appears to me that all permanent structures were at least 100 feet from the property line. I don't know exactly where it was. And then that's in the code. So that, because it's in the code, that is enforceable. It doesn't need to be an additional condition
Okay.
because it is actually in the code from an enforcement standpoint.
Mr. Wertz, I apologize. I got tied up with something here in the office real fast. What was your question?
Well, in the regulations, there is a subsection says all buildings and housing for a retreat or conference center shall be located not less than 100 feet from adjoining property. So is that a given? We don't need to deal with that? But I guess the other part of it, if Mr. Lemmerman was sort of going beyond that, sounded like he was asking for a restriction on all activities, some kind of setback for all activities when he brought up about the teenagers behind his property. I don't know if that's something we want to consider or not.
Like I say, I don't think that necessarily applies to people walking around the property or something along that line. Any formal type activities or group activities should be, yes, 100 feet. Any buildings or anything that they're using should be 100 feet. But like I say, if they're just walking the property, I don't see that as being an issue.
Thank you.
Okay, Dr. Dunkelberger. I see a head shake no. Mr. Simmons, any input here before the motion?
No.
Okay, it sounds to me like we're looking at a couple of conditions being put in. The size, I can't make the motion, you guys are, but the size of the number of people, the number, limit to the number of people, and also that it not be transferable. It's a non-transferable use if they are no longer the users of the property. They're the two things that I heard that should be conditions. The traffic issue will be addressed at the site plan, and with the site plan, there could actually be a request for a traffic study to be done. So that would be at a later process, a later time in the process for this approval that could be addressed. Okay, board members, do we have a motion?
In case number 6315, I move that we grant the request for conditional use for a retreat or conference center with the condition that they're with a capacity limit of 100 people and the stipulation that the conditional use is not transferable to any other ownership.
Do I have a second for the motion?
I'll second.
We have a second from Mr. Simmons. So we have a motion on the floor to approve a conditional use for a retreat or conference center with conditions that it be not non-transferable and that there's a limit of 100 people at any event. Is there any discussion on the motion? Okay, all those in favor, say aye and raise your right hand.
Aye.
Okay, all those opposed? The motion passes 5-0. Our oral decision will become final upon a written decision which will be issued within 30 days unless otherwise extended by the board. The board's decision may be appealed by filing a petition for judicial review with the clerk of the circuit court for Carroll County in accordance with the provisions of Chapter 200, Title 7 of the Maryland Rules of Procedure. The appeal must be filed within 30 days of the date of this board's written decision. Thank you very much. I have 10:39 right now. Let's go ahead and take about a 6-minute break. We'll come back at 10:45 for our second case of the day. begin our second case of the day. It's case number 6314. Mr. Allman, could you go ahead and introduce the file for us, please?
Yes, sir. Case 6314, a request for conditional use for farm alcohol production and distance and lot size variances. The site is located at 4805 Alasia Road, Manchester, Maryland, on property zoned A, Agricultural District in Election District 6. Applicant is Lan Lucas, Code of Public Local Laws and Ordinances, Section 158.002, 158.040, and 158.070 AA. A site visit was tentatively scheduled for Wednesday, April 21st, 2021 at approximately 10:30 a.m. In the file, we have comments from Hannah Weber, the comprehensive planner with the Bureau of Planning, finds that this conditional use, if granted, is consistent with the policies, timing of implementation of the plan, timing of development, timing of rezoning, development patterns, land uses, densities, and intensities, pursuant to the land use article 1-303 and 1-301. With regard to the requested variance, the application contains insufficient information to demonstrate the unwarranted hardship and injustice that would result from failing to grant the variance. Additionally, as required under state law, the application does not include information clarifying that the need for the variance is not self-created. It is the hope that additional information will be presented at the hearing that will allow the board to make an accurate determination as to whether the need for the variance is self-created. The findings should also not be interpreted by the applicant of the Board of Zoning Appeals or interesting parties as authorizing or denying the requested action. Further comments from planning. The case has been reviewed for consistency with the policies and recommendations contained in the 2014 master plan as amended in 2019, the Carroll County Water and Sewer Master Plan, and other functional plans as applicable. The request has been reviewed considering the compatibility of the request with the surrounding existing planned land uses, compatibility with the request with the vision and goals for the area as expressed in the relevant plan, consistency with major streets, consistency with planned community facilities, including but not limited to greenways, pedestrian facilities, schools, libraries, parks, water and sewer services, and other public safety facilities. The Department of Planning offers the following comments. Subject property has a future land use designation of village residential in the 2014 Carroll County Master Plan as amended in 2019. This request is consistent with the land use designation of residential. The surrounding area is comprised primarily of single lot residential and agriculture. The property is located on Alasia, within the Alasia Rural Village. The property is located within the Upper Patapsco Rural Legacy area. The request is compatible with the vision and goals for the area as expressed in Appendix A, implementation strategies of the 2014 Carroll County Master Plan. The request would not be affected by a planned major street. In 2013, a traffic report found that along Alasia Road, east of Hoffmanville Road, there is an ADT of 355 based off of the accompanying site plan. Planning staff does not perceive that the proposed use for this farm alcohol producer will have a major impact on traffic. The property is located in the no planned water service area and no planned sewer service area. The requested conditional use is consistent with the zoning classification under 158.002. And we have a map of the site. Have memo from Matt Shipley of the Carroll County Department of Health. Proposed use may not be acceptable unless it is demonstrated that there is adequate water supply and adequate area for installation of an initial and 2 replacement septic systems for the proposed use and any existing uses of this property. A public hearing notice dated Monday, April 5th, 2021. Comments from Christopher Hine, Bureau Chief of Resource Management. A site plan. No comments from Ag Land Preservation. A memo from Jay Boyd, Zoning Administrator. The applicant is requesting approval for the farm alcohol producer for production only. There will be no tastings or events on the site. As explained, a site plan approved by the Planning and Zoning Commission shall be required. There is a notice of public hearing for the adjoining property owners and interested parties. Initial comments from Jay Voigt. There are no initial comments for the requested conditional use application. The application for hearing, applicant is Lan Lucas. Request for conditional use of farm alcohol production and producer. The variance they are requesting is distance requirements from the 200-foot setbacks and agricultural district, the 3-acre lot area requirement. Then there are pictures of the property and improvements upon the property. We have a site plan of the Lucas property. And that is it, Mr. Chairman. I ask that the file be moved into evidence.
Do I have a motion to enter the file into evidence?
So moved.
Been moved. Do I have a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to enter the file into evidence. All those in favor say aye. Raise your right hand. Very good, board members. Okay, before we get started, Mr. Lucas, I'm assuming this is your first time before the Board of Zoning Appeals. So I'm going to go through the procedure that we use. You as the applicant can go ahead and provide your testimony as to what you're requesting today. Then members of the community can ask you questions of your testimony. The board will then be able to request to ask you questions of your testimony. Members of the public can then provide their own testimony subject to your cross-examination, also the board's cross-examination, and then there will be an opportunity for summation comments by you at the end. So with that, that's the process. We'll help you through it. But if anyone today plans on testifying, I'm going to ask that you raise your right hand and take the oath. And yes, very, very good. Whoever's sitting behind you, Mr. Lucas, that's good. Okay. Do you swear or affirm under penalties of perjury that the testimony you are about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? You say, I do.
I do.
Okay. Very good. Thank you. So, Mr. Lucas, you go ahead and you can make your presentation on your request here today.
Great. Thank you very much for your time today. Just wanted to start off with a little bit about my background. I've been a Carroll County resident since 1990. Graduated North Carroll in '95 and have been a current resident at 4805 Elysia Road here in Manchester since 2000. Since 2016, I've been working as a cider maker, first in Moncton, Maryland, and most recently up in Dallastown, which I've been currently laid off due to COVID restrictions. The sort of, again, use of our land for right now, back in 2016, I started planting cider-specific trees. Everything's grown all natural, organic, no chemical sprays. Currently have 106 trees with about 60 more planned for this year. As far as the building plan, we were planning on removing the old dilapidated building that sits on the close to the road and put up a 24 by 40 building, again, for processing only. All the processing would take place inside the building. There would be no tasting room facility, no events, there's no external noise, no additional traffic. And, you know, with plans to sell the product locally. As far as the actual cider making process, again, basically using all the fruit from here on our property and processing it in a very non-industrialized small batch process. Again, using a naturally fermented, using wild yeast and native bacteria, and, you know, creating this sort of a Solera wine method and in the process, and where I'm using my own consistent micro organism environment. So I'm not using a lot of chemicals. There's not a lot of waste and runoff. I really want to keep this, you know, living environmental organism thing in place for future use. Any potential waste will get settled out and reused again. Again, it's all very small batch. There's no chemicals, no filtering or refining agents. Really trying to implement a zero waste facility and reusing everything. And again, any kind of waste or, you know, potential non-cider product would be very minimal and be pretty much given right back to the land through compost. As far as neighborhood impacts, you know, we really don't see that there being any increased, you know, pollution of any sorts, no added traffic or noise, no added air or odor pollution. You know, again, we've been here for, excuse me, over just a little over 20 years, and very concerned with having a, you know, very low to no impact on our neighborhood and the environment. I'm not sure if you guys had any questions about any of that.
Well, first of all, thank you for the testimony. We have Jeff Wilson on, and we have Ted Beddow or Beddow on. Do you have questions of Mr. Lucas's testimony? Mr. Go ahead, Mr. Ralston.
No, we do not have any questions.
And could you please state for the record your name, address, and spell for the record your last name?
Yeah, my name is Jeff Rawson. I'm at 6607 Rumples Road. We're actually calling in for case 6310.
Okay, very good. Yeah, we will get to that as soon as we possibly can. Sorry about that.
Sure. No.
Mr. Beddow, are you weighing in on this case or the one down on Rumples Road?
The one on Rumples Road.
Okay, very good. So there is no one from the community to ask questions on this case. Board members, questions of Mr. Lucas's testimony?
No questions.
I have just one quick question. Are you planning on having employees, or this is just going to be strictly your production operation?
Yeah, strictly by production operation. Yeah, at this plan, there's no plan or really need for any extra employees.
Thank you.
Mr. Wertz.
Yes, could you specifically state the variances that are requested? In other words, you're requesting distance and lot size variances. Could you indicate what's required and what you're proposing?
Sure. As my understanding, the setback requirements were 200 feet for the buildings. I'm not sure if you have a copy of the site plan. Yeah, I might be able to share it with my screen here. But we had the at the bottom, the requested variances listed for the front, side, rear, for both sides, the front and rear. Basically the footage for each of those, and the percent of that in reference to the 200-foot setback number.
Okay, what's the lot size variance?
Our current lot size is 2.29, and the variance for the property size is supposed to be 3 acres.
Okay, thank you.
I have a follow-up question.
Okay.
In consideration of the response, and I apologize, I don't remember who said it when the case was introduced, we need you to demonstrate how, if we don't grant these variances for you, that it's going to create a hardship for you. Can you speak to that?
Sure. Yeah, again, it's something that I currently been laid off at my cider position at Windridge Farm in Dallastown. It's been about a year. At this rate, it was kind of always my plan to hopefully get my own thing going. Talking with my current boss, it doesn't seem like they're getting back up to full operation anytime soon. This would really greatly help me out in trying to, get some extra income going, while things are still sort of in limbo. Sure.
Hi, I'm Shannon. I'm Land's wife. We've looked into, in looking to start a cidery, we've run the numbers to try to, rent out space or rehab space or buy other space off our property. And in order to make that profitable, it has to become a very high volume operation, which is not in keeping with the intention or the vision that land has. So, it's really about using the products of the land and making these small batch products, which, that's why doing it on our land is the way to go.
Thank you.
Mr. Simmons, any questions?
No.
Question I have, Mr. Lucas, you say that you have trees, so your trees are on site?
Correct.
So, so what we're looking at is the location. When we were out there doing our site inspections, you had flagged off where your proposed building is going to go.
Yes.
And the location of that is based on where your trees are already planted and where the existing structures already were. So it would be a hardship for you to change the location of that building to meet the setbacks because of the trees that you've already planted on the property?
Correct.
Okay. That's what Ms. Eckert was alluding to in the staff report. It said that that on the surface, just looking at the file, it appeared that the setbacks were as a result of your that they were what's the word I'm looking for? They were
Self-generated.
there you go. Thank you, Mr. Simmons. I really needed that. Self-generated, and you're saying that because of where the trees are, they're already established. This is the most logical place so that it didn't disrupt the grove of trees that you already have.
Correct.
Okay. Okay, Dr. Dunkelberger, any questions of Mr. Lucas? Okay. Board members, any other questions? Okay, Mr. Lucas, would you like to make summation comments real quick?
I'm sorry, could you repeat that, please?
Do you have any summation comments that you would like to give?
Yeah, just in general that, you know, again, we're not trying to, you know, do anything here that is detrimental to the land or, you know, impact our neighborhood or neighbors in any way. You know, hopefully, you know, if anything, we're going to be providing something that is, you know, helpful to our area and our local community.
Okay, thank you very much. The hearing and record of this case is now closed, and in accordance with the Open Meetings Act of Maryland, we will consider the case. Board members, who wants to go first? Mr. Simmons?
Yeah, I'd be glad to. It seems to me that this is a very straightforward conditional use, similar to one that we've granted multiple times by this board. Interesting that it's farm alcohol production. I presume you transport that by truck in vats or containers of some sort. I see no problem with this. I'm going to vote in favor.
Okay, Dr. Dunkelberger. Ms. Eckert.
I have nothing further to add, other than I believe it's been demonstrated that not granting the variances would result in a practical difficulty. So I'm prepared to vote in favor of this request.
Okay, Mr. Wertz.
I don't have anything to add to the comments.
Nor do I. So board members, do we have a motion?
I move that in case 6314, we approve the request for a conditional use for farm alcohol production and distance and lot size variances as stated.
Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second. Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor say aye. Raise your right hand.
Aye.
Okay, the motion carries 5-0. Our oral decision will become final upon a written decision, which will be issued within 30 days unless otherwise extended by the board. The board's decision may be appealed by filing a petition for judicial review with the clerk of the circuit court for Carroll County in accordance with the provisions of Chapter 200, Title 7 of the Maryland Rules of Procedure. The appeal must be filed within 30 days of the date of the board's written decision. Thank you very much. And it's 11:12. We're going to take we'll come back at 20 minutes after for our third case of the day. call our third hearing to order here this morning. It's case number 6310. Mr. Allman, could you go ahead and introduce the file for us, please?
Yes. Case 6310, a request for a conditional use for a commercial dog kennel for 10 or more dogs and distance variances. The site is located at 6607 Runkles Road, Mount Airy, Maryland, on property zone C, Conservation District in Election District 13 by applicant Rebecca Rawson. Code of Public Laws and Ordinances, section 158.071D2 and 158.040. A site plan was tentatively scheduled for April 21st, 2021 at 9:45 a.m. In the file, we have comments from Hannah Weber, the comprehensive planner with the Bureau of Planning. After review and pursuant to sections 1.303 and 1-301 of the land use article of Maryland, they found that this conditional use is consistent with the policies, timing, and implementation of the plan, timing and of development, timing of rezoning, development patterns, land uses, densities, and intensities. Further comments from the from planning. This request has been reviewed for consistency with the policies and recommendations contained in the 2014 master plan as amended in 2019, and the Carroll County Water and Sewer Master Plan and other functional plans as applicable. The request has been reviewed considering compatibility of the request with surrounding existing and planned land uses, the compatibility of the request with the vision and goals of the area as expressed in the relevant plan, consistency in the planned major streets, consistency with planned community facilities, including but not limited to greenways, pedestrian facilities, schools, libraries, parks, water and sewer services, and other public safety facilities. The planning department offers the following comments. The subject property has a future land use designation of conservation. This request is consistent with the land use designation of residential. The surrounding area is comprised primarily of agricultural and low density residential. The request is compatible with the vision and goals for the area expressed in Appendix B, future land use designation of the 2014 Carroll County Master Plan as amended in 2019. The request would not be affected by a planned community facility. The request would not be affected by a planned major street. In 2014, a traffic report found that along Runkles Road, north of Boatler Road, there is an ADT of 547. Planning staff does not perceive that the proposed use for this commercial kennel will have a major impact on traffic. The property is located in no planned water and service area and no planned sewer service area. The requested conditional use is consistent with the zoning classification under 158.70. Then we have an image of the sort of bird's eye view image of the parcel. We have comments from Matt Shipley with the Carroll County Environmental Health Department. Proposed use may not be acceptable unless it is demonstrated there is adequate water supply and adequate area for installation of an initial and 2 replacement septic systems for the proposed use and any existing uses of this property. Comments from the Bureau of Permits and Inspection. Any new buildings or construction will require permits. All areas for the viewing and interacting with the animals that are open to the public shall be in compliance with the Maryland Accessibility Code. There's a notice of public hearing that was issued on Monday, April 5th, 2021. Comments from the Bureau of Resource Management. A plan showing the limit of disturbance must be provided in order to determine how the applicant will address stormwater management. The Carroll County Humane Society had no comments. There's a site plan in the file. Carroll County Ag Preservation Program had no comments. Comments from the zoning administrator, Jay Boyd. Applicant is requesting a commercial kennel, 10 or more dogs under 158.071D2. A site plan approval by the county's Planning and Zoning Commission will be required. Then we have a notice of public hearing to the applicant and adjoining property owners and interested parties. Initial comment form from Jay Boyd, need to provide what variances are needed, need to show location of kennel on property with distance to kennel building and the property lines, need to show parking facility. The application appears complete, and this is from March 22nd, 2024. Then we have an application for the hearing from the applicant, Rebecca Rawson. Again, the request is for a commercial kennel for 10 or more dogs and possible multiple variances required to meet the distance requirements. There is a site plan. There is also plans for a structure and the interior of that structure. And I request that the file be entered into evidence, Mr. Chairman.
Do we have a motion to enter? Very good. We have a motion. Do we have a second to the motion to enter the file into evidence?
Second.
Okay. We have a motion and a second to enter the file into evidence. All those in favor, say aye. Raise your right hand.
Aye.
Okay. Very good. So we will enter the file into evidence. Before we get started, let me explain the process that we're using. See the Rawsons, who are the applicants, are on the call here. What we do is the applicants have the opportunity to present their case about what they're doing, and in this case, it's a request for a conditional use for a dog kennel. After the presentation of testimony, members that have called in have the opportunity to ask you questions of your testimony. And then after you've given your testimony and they answered questions by them and also the board, then anyone from the community, either in support or in opposition, will have the opportunity to provide their own testimony in the case. So with that, and before we get started, we also have to take the oath. So if you're going to testify today, could you please raise your right hand? Do you swear or affirm under the penalties of perjury that the testimony you are about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? You say, I do.
Yes. Yes. I do.
Very good. Thank you. And I want to remind you that when Mr. Rawson, when you present your case, please state your name, address, and occupation, and spell for the record your last name. So, Mr. Rawson, go ahead.
Thank you so much. Actually, Becky, it's her business. She's going to be presenting. So
I'm Rebecca Rawson, and I live at 6607 Runkles Road, Mount Airy, Maryland, 21771. Last name is Rawson, and I am a dog breeder. I think I got it all.
Yes. Okay, so tell us about your application here today and what you're requesting.
Sure. it was recently brought to our attention that we were required a commercial kennel license to raise puppies in our home for sale. In 2012, we moved into our property, or we purchased our property. 2013, we moved in, and we purchased our first breeding dog in 2015. Our business name is Wild Daisy Labradoodles, and our business model is not one that we are actually looking to build a kennel for. Our dogs are sold. Basically, the price point of the sale is that they're raised in the home as family pets and they don't live in a kennel environment. But I have more than 2 litters of puppies a year, so I was required the kennel license. The way we run our business is we have 4 dogs that live in our home with us, and then we do what's called a guardianship program, where instead of selling someone a dog, I give them a dog. It's health tested and it comes back to me when it's time to have puppies, and it lives with us in our home until its puppies are old enough to go home. And then the dog's returned to its guardian home. After the dog is finished having the number of litters in its lifetime that's required for their guardian contract, I pay for the spay or neuter of the dog, and then it goes to live in their home forever to avoid a kennel type situation. So we're really not looking to build anything new. The site plan was actually my home. The building structure on the plat, what I sent in, is of our home, and the distance variances that we are requesting are from our home to our neighbor's property lines. And initially I had put on the application either 10 or less or 10 or more, I guess depending on what was granted. And the only reason that we said 10 or more is because there are times that in the summer, if one of our guardian families goes out of town and say, I have my 4 dogs, and then I have 4 litters of puppies here with their mom, and then that guardian home has 3 of my dogs, I'm over 10 dogs at my home that have their permanent canine teeth, which is what I was told the rule was. So generally speaking, we have 5 to 6 dogs here, but there is the occasional time that we would have more than 10. So we just wanted to make sure we were following the rules.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Rawson. Does anyone from the public have any questions of Ms. Rawson's testimony? I just want to gently remind you, questions of her testimony, you'll have the opportunity to give your own testimony a little bit later in these proceedings. Mr. Beddow?
Yes, sir.
Any questions of Ms. Rawson's testimony?
I've had an opportunity to review the request with the Rawsons. We're neighbors. I have no objection to what she is doing now. My concern is that we don't open up a potential with a 10+ commercial kennel approval that could impact my property. I'm an adjacent property owner. I guess I should tell you, I'm Ted Beddow, 6419 Rumples Road, Mount Airy.
Okay, do you have any questions of Ms. Rawson's testimony? Do you want to ask about the 10-dog limit or anything?
Yeah, the 10-dog limit. I understand that there's a vague requirement, but is there a way to restrict that requirement to be more mirroring more what she's doing now?
Mr. Bale?
Mr. Voigt, go ahead, please. Thank you.
I just want to remind you that I know they're requesting for more than 10 dogs, but you can set a limit on the number of dogs that they do have there. So that's a possibility. And then if, they do grow beyond or want to grow beyond that limit, they'd have to come back before the board to request a modification to that approval.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Voigt. And we have a caller number 8 who's not identified on the call. Do you have any questions of Ms. Rawson's testimony? Okay, I guess not. Board members, any questions of Ms. Rawson's testimony? Ms. Eckert?
None from me.
Okay, thanks, Mr. Simmons. Ms. Eckert?
How many litters do you have a year, typically?
It varies. It would depend on, how many dogs come into season, but I would say 7 is probably a good high number, 7 to 8. And on a slow year, it could be 3.
Thank you. And if you're requesting for 10 or more dogs, if we were inclined to grant this and put a cap on it, what number would be acceptable to you?
It's like I said, the way that we run our business. They are not all living here. They don't, but there are times that they are here. So we just want to make sure that we're in compliance. I would say that the maximum number of dogs that I would ever have here would be 14. And that would be if it would be an extreme circumstance. If I had 5 litters of puppies, all 4 of my dogs and 4 of my guardian families wanted to go away on the same week in July and couldn't find a place to board their dog. So it's not a regular situation for me to have that many dogs. And I spoke with the Beddoes, if I can continue with that, you tell me. I spoke with Kim Beddoes over the weekend, and I believe that their concern was if we were to, in the future, move away from this property, they want to be sure that someone else can't come in and build a kennel facility that would then affect their property, because we're not looking to build a kennel facility. We raise the dogs in the home, and we have a 3,000 square foot basement that has been finished as a living space that our dogs raise their puppies in, and our family pets live with us in the upper portion of our home. So that is where we raise our dogs, and we have no interest in pursuing a kennel. But I think their concern is if the kennel license would transfer to the next person that moved in behind us, then they could build something out back. But to our understanding, the distance variances are from our home to their property line, not another kennel. So the new applicant would have to go through this whole process all over. Is that correct?
Yes. So I'm going to jump in with a question. So it's my understanding from your testimony that there is no intention for building any additional structures on your property for the dogs. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay. Other board members, questions? Mr. Wirtz? Dr. Dunkelberger, any questions? Okay. Mr. Voigt.
Mr. Bell, thank you. Like I say, I just want to remind you that unless you put a restriction on the approval, limited to the current property owners, someone could possibly come in afterwards and build a commercial kennel because the approval does follow the property unless you limit it. So that's just a reminder so that everybody understands that if they sell and there's no restriction, then the next person could do a commercial kennel unless you restrict it.
But that commercial kennel would have to exist in our home,
parameters of the home.
The parameters of our home, correct? Because that's where the variances are.
Unless they apply to change it, they can always apply to the BZA to modify an existing decision.
So they would go through this process again.
In a way, yes, to do anything, they would have to go for an amended. Yes, they would have to do that. But like I said, I mean, think, even with the restrictions, I mean, if they could take technically, if the commercial kennel was approved just as a commercial kennel on the property, and you sold it, they could come in and turn your whole house and any existing buildings possibly into a commercial kennel without having to come back before the board if they convert the house to a full kennel.
Yeah, I would agree with the Beddoes. I would not want that to happen. So if we need
right.
to put a cap
To the current owners.
We would want that.
So, like I say, just reminding the board members that unless you put that restriction on, it follows through with the next owner.
That's not something that we haven't done in the past. Matter of fact, I think Lisa did it earlier today, if I'm not mistaken. Correct? So you have the language to make it approved only for the current applicant. Is that correct, Lisa?
Correct.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions of the Walson's testimony? Mr. Walson, do you want to provide any testimony or no?
Me? No.
Very good.
No, sir.
Mr. Bedell, any additional comments?
I'd say this is the simplest kennel case that we've had in years. And I want to thank the applicants for their integrity and honesty. Nice to hear.
Well, thank you.
Yes, this is a welcome change. We see dog kennels and we normally shudder. Caller number 8, I see your microphone is on. Do you have any comments to make about this case?
Mr. Bale, excuse me for interrupting, but maybe they could address the distance variances.
Okay, very good. The distance variances that are being requested, you've got the information in front of you. Do you want to address those distance variances? I'm talking to the Ralston family. Yes.
Okay. Yes, I don't think that I actually do have the distance variances in front of me. I have my plat here, but I didn't save myself a copy of what I sent you guys.
But we believe it's at 400 feet.
To each property line, is that correct? So the closest neighbor to us is property line is 83 feet, but distance to their home is well over 400 feet. The next closest neighbor would be the Beddoes, and that's 204 feet. So the variance to their property line would be roughly 200. But then again, their home is quite a distance off of their property line as well. And then I believe one of them was just 13 feet and one of them was around 95 feet. Again, to do the 10 or more dogs.
But the houses are
all quite far away.
Are well beyond the 400-foot mark.
How big is your lot?
10.28 acres. It's just an L shape. So the one property in front of us, our home actually sits like 83 feet from the property line. But like I said, it's quite a few hundred feet to their home from our home.
That answer your question, Cedric?
Well, Mr. Boyd, is this, I mean, have we covered everything with regard to the site distances? I mean, I think we need to demonstrate the practical difficulty, and maybe it's just by virtue of the shape of the lot being L-shaped.
That could be, like you say, I mean, you've covered the distances, at least without me looking at the map, which I don't have in front of me, at least to the closest homes, which are going to be the closest variances that they're going to need. I would think that by granting that closest distance to the adjoining property variance, I think that would probably cover all the other adjacent properties also.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Voigt. Does that answer your questions, Ms. Eckert?
I'm not confident that we have the practical difficulty answered yet.
I think the practical difficulty question lies with the L-shaped lot along with the existing structure, which is the house. It appears to me that through the testimony, I don't want to put words in people's mouths, but the testimony is that they want the dogs in the basement of the Ralston's home. So I think the practical difficulty would be that the home is existing and the shape of the lot that they purchased was already there. So they're not going to move the house to a different location. So I think they've met the practical difficulties standard.
Okay, I just wanted to have some type of discussion and have it as part of the record. Thank you.
Okay, very good. And that's, yes, we do need that discussion. Okay, any other testimony? And Dennis, you have any questions, Mr. Wertz? Okay. Very good. Presentation of testimony and evidence is now closed and summations are in order. Ms. Ralston, would you like to conclude with any summation comments?
I have to be honest, I don't know what summation comments are.
Well, just make a summary of what your request is.
Okay.
And
Yep. So I am a dog breeder. We began an in-home dog breeding program when our children were small so that I was able to stay home with them. We have grown the business. It has been a success for us, and we would like to continue that success if it's my sole income so that I am able to be home with my kids. We have no interest in boarding dogs or building a future kennel on our property to board more dogs. We are just a regular family trying to run our business.
May I ask a curiosity question?
Sure.
Go ahead, Mr. Simmons.
About how many dogs a year? And when you sell one, can you give me an approximation of how much each one brings in dollar-wise?
Huh? Oh, my husband's saying approximately on a good year, 50 to 60 puppies, and on a bad year could be 30 puppies. It really depends on the number of puppies each mother has. Some mothers, like my minis, for example, have 4, whereas a medium-sized female could have 12. So it's up to Mother Nature. And each puppy sells for $3,500.
Okay.
Plus.
Thank you for answering that.
Okay. At this point, the hearing and record of this case is closed, and in accordance with the Open Meetings Act of Maryland, the board will now consider the case. Board members, who wants to start? Mr. Simmons, do you want to start?
Yes, I would be glad to. I think this is a straightforward conditional use for commercial kennel without conflict or hostility from neighbors, which is welcome from my point of view. Sounds like a wonderful business, a way for a lady to stay home, raise her kids, and add to her income. Not a bad idea. I'm going to vote in favor.
Thanks.
Okay, Dr. Dunkelberger. Okay, yeah. Okay, Ms. Eckert.
I don't have anything to add. I'm ready to vote in favor.
Okay, very good. Mr. Wertz.
I would be in favor of a transfer restriction. And I think we need to consider whether there should be a limit to the maximum number of dogs.
I agree with you, Dennis, in terms of the transfer restriction. And what's a reasonable limit in Mr. or Mrs. Rawson's opinion? Can you answer that number?
A reasonable limit to the number of dogs we'd have at one time, I would say would be 15. Under 15.
Can you give a number under 15? How about
14.
12? I did it.
Okay, so 14.
Yeah, and that's really, really, really unlikely.
Yes, I understand that.
But possible.
Could be, yeah.
Yeah, but you're not trying to beat the system. That's what impresses me.
Right. Well, thanks. We are rule followers.
Good for you.
And again, there would only be 14 dogs if there were extenuating circumstances that you don't foresee that would occur. However, it would be possible.
Could be, yeah. Highly unlikely, but could be.
Okay. Any other comments by board members? Okay. Mr. Wirtz, you want to go ahead and make the motion?
Okay, in case 6310, I move that the board approve a commercial use, excuse me, a conditional use for a commercial dog kennel for 10 or more dogs and the requested distance variances. I'll make this approval contingent on two conditions. One would be the approval of the conditional use cannot be transferred to any other property owner or entity. And the maximum number of dogs to be kept on the premises at any one time would be 14.
I'll second that.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second. Very clear what the motion was. I'm not going to repeat it. Any further discussion on the motion? Okay, seeing none. All those in favor, raise your right hand. Say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, no. The motion carries 5-0. Our oral decision will become final upon a written decision, which will be issued within 30 days unless otherwise extended by the board. The board's decision may be appealed by filing a petition for judicial review with the clerk of the circuit court for Carroll County in accordance with the provisions of Chapter 200, Title 7 of the Maryland Rules of Procedure. The appeal must be filed within 30 days of the date of the board's written decision. Thank you very much, and we are adjourned.
Thank you.
Thanks very much. Great.